911, what is the address of your emergency?
78. Help!
Aliens about 1 operator 6180. What's the address of your emergency? 1797 Sumter Street. We're being robbed at some point.
No. They're following me to my house. The guns are already out. She's shooting. Okay.
Hello and welcome to Stop the Threat. My name is James Towle. On this week's episode, we take you to the evergreen state of Washington for a reenactment which we have entitled Driveway Theft. Thank you for selecting Stop the Threat this week. Appreciate your support. Look forward to your emails and talking to me on social media. Thank you all for being here. Okay, on today's show, we're going to be discussing the theft of a vehicle from your own driveway. Right in your own neighborhood by a passerby, almost a crime of opportunity. So actually, I would like to begin with a question. Does law enforcement have the ability to go through a neighborhood driving along, you see somebody walking along the sidewalk, and you say, what's about that guy I don't like? I don't know, let's talk to him. It was a day when you could do that. Can you do that today?
No.
Okay. You kind of reluctantly went into that, but you know, no is going to be the bottom line.
Yeah, well, I date back to the early 80s in law enforcement, so there was a different time and a different era. You'd have to really articulate a reason why to stop and have to have a real solid reason to stop and question somebody. Somebody you were looking for that met a description, something that just recently occurred, something that was in action.
A close description. How's that? Okay, I'm looking for, he's 5'9", he's white, he has short hair and a tattoo. You see something like that, would you stop?
It depends on what happened, and I'm probably getting close to getting within my rights.
Okay, all right. Now, counselor, you're walking down the street, you're the guy with the tattoo. Law enforcement stops and they say, hey, Jim, come over here a minute. What can you legally do at that point?
I don't have to legally do anything. I can keep walking and ignore the request.
Okay, wait a minute. You can ignore the request? Okay, I'm going to go back over here to law enforcement. You have, hey, come here a minute. And he keeps walking. How are you feeling at this point?
Well, not as though I'm getting my feelings hurt, but he is right. I mean, it's not a legitimate request, but it's at that point when you start asking questions and you're hoping you're going to garner some kind of cooperation and identify somebody, but if you don't know what's been done and you can't link them to it, then you're kind of hard pressed to.
Jim's walking away.
Yeah.
Okay, you have the general description of a guy with a tattoo, could be, and he's walking away. What are you going to do?
Keep an eye on him.
You're just gonna get back in the car and just drive slowly behind him?
It's possible. Depends on what crime's committed. Depends on what we're looking for him for.
Tammy, you want a part of this?
I want to know at what point do you have to stop? I mean, if I'm walking away because I kind of fit his description, at what point am I required to say, yes, officer, how can I help you?
The point is this: the officer must have probable cause or at least a reasonable suspicion. And the point at which you should stop and talk to the officer is when that officer says, sir, someone matching your description just did XYZ, and I'd like to talk to you. You now know that that officer has a reason to stop you, and if you don't stop, then the officer can go beyond just that simple request and perhaps even use force to stop you. Not deadly force, but stop you.
Sounds reasonable to me.
So he keeps walking.
Then you have a problem. Strategically, for me, that would be wrong, because I've now heard someone matching my description is wanted for a crime. I'd better stop.
Hold it right there. When we come back, we're going to pick that up. We're going to go back over to Wes. Don't go away. Thanks for coming back, viewers. I think we're right on the edge of something here. I don't want to walk away from it yet. I do want to show you part one, but I'm going to let the counselor finish his statement.
Tammy had a question. I think it's a good question, so why don't you go ahead and ask that first, and then I'll fill in the blanks.
As far as at what point the suspect stops, does that vary at all state to state? I mean, is Texas different than Arizona? What are we talking about?
Well, not according to the United States Supreme Court. They've interpreted the Constitution and our Bill of Rights to give people the right to walk away from a police officer when they have done nothing wrong and they are not told the reason for the stop, so they can keep walking in all states.
So you would have to, as the officer, you would have to say to him, as Jim just said, you know, there's been a crime in the neighborhood. You fit a description. Can I just talk? Is he gonna now? If he bolts, you've already got your bad guy, right?
Well, you've got a guy who's bolted from law enforcement. You don't necessarily have that particular
Okay,
suspect.
maybe he's a good guy who's just afraid.
Well, people run from law enforcement for a lot of reasons. So it not necessarily that crime. He may have committed a different crime.
Well, that too. Okay, all right. Let's watch part 1 of driveway theft.
Honey, we've got to get going soon.
I'll be right down. It's cold outside. Can you please go warm the car up?
Okay. It's not that cold. Stupid weather.
My grandma's been kind of like, oh, you need to go get a real job, and you need to do something with yourself. But I don't have any marketable skills. Yeah, you know me. Other than what we do. Yeah. I'll come by the garage later. Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, I'll hit you up. Bye. This is set up? No. Yes! Hey! Get out of my car! Get out of my car!
Okay, here's our individual walking down the street. Officer Doss sees him walking down the street, and he says, there's been a couple of car thefts in the area, and you fit a general description. Come over and talk to me. Would you do that?
Would I do that, or should I do that?
Would you do that?
It really depends on the circumstances, but if you've got a solid description individual and he does meet that description, as we've discussed, yeah. But you would at least try to get him to stop to talk to you so you could identify him, yay or nay.
Okay. Anybody else see anything here that worthy of a comment?
I agree with Wes. As long as the officer articulates a reason for the stop, the officer's good.
Well, then let's go back to the more obvious. I mean, I saw a key fob on the key chain. Would you not go out and start your car, as I do, and I have dogs, so during the summer season, I leave the car running. But I leave and I take the key fob with me and I hit lock and I walk away. I mean, somehow or another, this is another one of those bad decisions that's going to lead to a worse decision because of that. I'll give you a quick story. So I pull into the post office in California. There's 2 CHP motor units out front. I leave the car running, and I park right across from him. I leave the car running, and I go into the post office. As I'm passing by the one officer, he looks at me and he says, "Excuse me, sir, are you actually going to leave your car running as you go into the post office?" And I said, "Well, I got 2 cops right out here in front. Do you think anybody's going to steal a car?" And he didn't think it was funny, of course, but he looked back at me and he said, "Suppose we leave." And I said, "Well, and I turned. I called the dog's name, and a 125-pound German Shepherd stuck his head out the window and looked back. And the officer smiled at me and he said, "You have a nice day, sir." That's my best story. I know it's a little off the subject, but I like that story. It's true, by the way. So what other mistakes did the homeowner, car owner make? Any so far, other than the fact he leaves his car running in the driveway?
Starting a futile chase. He's not going to win that race. Unless he knows his car doesn't go any faster than 6 miles an hour, he's not going to win that race.
Right. Was there something about calling 911 in there somewhere, and I missed it?
It didn't happen.
Okay. Law enforcement's 5 minutes away. Your car is leaving. So I chase the vehicle in hopes of, I don't know, what am I going to do? Voice intimidation, and the guy's going to pull over and surrender? I don't think so. Would I have been better off just to stay inside, fight my feelings of going after the vehicle, and calling 911, giving them the license number, and hey, my car just went down the street, and would that have been a better plan than running after him, not knowing what you might be getting into, number one?
Very likely he has insurance on that car and he can have that car replaced. It doesn't look to be his only means of transportation. I think he probably has means to recover that car or its value.
I like that. When we come back, we'll show you part 2 right after a few comments. Don't go away. Welcome back, viewers. Just before we left, though, Tammy had made one good remark about the insurance value of the vehicle, and she's going to follow that with?
My concern for him chasing after the car is that I think in the glimpse you may or may not have seen that he has a firearm on his hip as he's chasing, because he feels, well, I've got this gun. There's no way I'm going to let them do that. And I feel for the mindset of, well, because I have this, then I'm going to. He's in no way in any danger. He's choosing to put himself in harm's way at this point.
I think that's a real good point. And I think that's a mistake in a lot of different instances. I didn't see the gun in the waistband, but raise your hand if you did. You did also?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
Everybody saw it but me. Okay, and I'm supposed to know. Anyway, I think that's a good point that you brought out. Did we fully cover the insurance value thing? Are we comfortable there?
I think the gist of Tammy's point is that you're going to lose only a car. And who cares whether you get 90% of its value or 100% or 80%? Don't do something stupid and chase a car that puts you in danger.
True.
And he has a gun, so.
Right. And now we know he has a gun.
I think we might kind of be worried about what's going to happen next.
Let's find out. Let's watch part 2.
The car's warming up.
Okay, just give me a minute. I've got to find my shoes.
What the? Somebody's stealing the car. Hey! Get out of my car!
Okay, I guess we thought something like that was going to take place. I didn't think he was going to be that accurate, but apparently he was. Don't know how often that would happen, but it happened this time. So who wants to start with that?
There's so much going wrong.
Where do you start?
You're pursuing a stolen vehicle, and to that point, we've been on a number of these where it's not even a vehicle of that level of value. It's something smaller, and somebody takes off in a foot pursuit over somebody who's armed or potentially armed. Running into the unknown is not a good idea for anybody, period. And he's not legally or morally obligated to do that. and then dispatching around at a guy who's stolen that vehicle in a neighborhood. It's not just the bullet passing through the vehicle, but it's the vehicle passing through other people's yards or homes.
Good
I mean,
point.
it's an incredibly wrong situation.
And I also think that Tammy was still right, and I want to go over it one more time, that he felt as though he was armed. He's losing his vehicle, and he feels as though he can affect the outcome of what's about to take place. I'm going to start by saying that is so human. I don't know many people who could fight that reason to chase the vehicle, especially if he thinks he's armed. I mean, I can understand it, but I think we're going to learn that probably not the wisest move to make, Counselor?
Not at all. He went into a pursuit with a firearm, and he eventually fired, and he's looking at no less than manslaughter charges.
Okay, how about if it was still on his property? Would it still be manslaughter charges? The guy gets in the car, he starts down the driveway, bang, you shoot.
Yeah, that's difficult to answer because in this scenario it wasn't. The guy was driving away, shot him in the back, it put the neighbors at risk because the guy lost control of the car. We heard it, and the minute he saw that guy stealing the car while he was in the house, he should have used 911 for its intended purposes. To call.
We haven't heard 911 yet.
Yeah, to call for help.
Right.
That's what 911 is for, to call for help. And instead he went out in a vigilante style and shot the guy in the back.
Right, and that's exactly what happened. And that's going to make for a difficult resolution to the problem. So when we come back, I'm going to give you the follow-up of this, and we'll see what happened. Don't go away. Welcome back, viewers. I'm going to start with the follow-up, and the follow-up is as follows. The homeowner called the police and reported the shooting to 911. Something along the lines of, "He was stealing my car, I shot him," is how it read in the report. So he gave that information up immediately. I know that you're probably going to have something to say about that. The other part is, you are correct. The DA charged him with first-degree manslaughter. Now, there's not many of these reenactments. If you've followed us over the years, not many of these reenactments has the shooter, what we would refer to as the good guy in most cases, has ever been charged with anything. This is very rare indeed, but he put himself into a situation where you read it early on.
He used bad judgment. His emotions got the better of him. He pulled the trigger without thinking of the consequences.
And that's what happened. I am told that he did crash into a garage, and that's what no one else was injured in that, but certainly could have been. That must have played something into the DA's decision, is that, after being shot, it gets, I think it gets a little convoluted in there. I mean, the guy's trying to get his car back. Pulling the gun was not a great idea. He did it, ends up shooting the guy.
But I'd like to go back and finish answering your question. If this had happened in the driveway, I think the same rules would apply, unless our good guy was in the car and it was a carjacking.
Right.
Then he has the right to use deadly force to stop the carjacking.
Okay, good point. All right, I like that. Because I know a lot of people are going to ask me that question. Is it because he was down the street and you shot him basically in the back? Would that have made any difference had it been a carjacking? And I know that I'm going to get that email. So that's a good clarification of that. Anybody want to do further on that?
I just think there's yes, it was a bad decision to take the shot, but when I think about kids playing outside, riding their bikes, doing whatever, families out there, he got really lucky that it sounded like it went into another parked car, you say garage, something like that. He got really lucky that there wasn't worse for him.
Well, it's not even people on the street. I mean, your point's exactly right. I mean, you don't control the physics of that round when it leaves the weapon. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, depending on what part of somebody else's home it struck, you don't know how far it's going to penetrate into that structure. Mm-hmm. What else is going on in the neighborhood? There's way too many variables.
Mm-hmm. And I think, as we've said 1,000 times, you're responsible for that bullet when it leaves the gun until it comes to a complete halt. Correct, Counselor?
Exactly. And how many times as instructors have all of us told our students, know what's behind your target?
Yeah. So it was a bad decision that only got worse. All right, I have a quick email that I'm going to say it's quick, but it could be longer than I thought, but I'll try to summarize as much as I can. This is from Joe. Joe is a regular viewer, and he writes, I had a situation in my bookstore today. 4 men pulled in the parking lot, made me feel uncomfortable. I kept them in, and I kept watching them as they entered the cafe. The man came in, he pulled out a 12 to 15-inch Bowie knife, started waving it around. I left the store, reported it to the manager, and my question to you is, please critique my actions and give me some thoughts on what I should or should not have done, and share this with your panel.
He's not the owner or the employee. He's a patron at the
He's a
store.
patron.
I don't necessarily believe he did anything wrong.
Okay, so you don't believe that someone waving around a knife and you are armed, that you have a somewhat of a responsibility to stay behind?
It's not my bookstore. That's not my job. Be a good witness. Make that phone call. You know, get help there on the way.
I agree. If someone does something to escalate it and make it worse, we don't want that to happen. So I agree with both Wes and Tammy.
Yeah, and I agree also, because I think probably one of the problems is that someone might have stayed behind and only made things worse. We ran out of time, and I'm sorry, because there was probably some more in that we could have covered. Thank you for watching this week. See me on social media. Be safe, be trained, be alert.